Sometimes betrayal strikes not with a knife, but with quiet laughter behind your back, stretched over years and turned into entertainment. Victor Dalton built his life from scratch, raising a company from a cold garage to a multi-million-dollar deal. But a single mistake, a synced account, revealed a monstrous truth. His wife, his children, the person he trusted most. 7 years of secret conversations, mockery, and betrayal, all hidden behind familiar smiles. Victor could have broken, or simply walked away. But instead, he chose to do what he had always done best: fight. Not for revenge, for truth, for himself. They thought they knew his weaknesses, but they had no idea what he was capable of when everything he loved was betrayed. Greetings, my dear friend. I am very happy that you are watching my video, and I will be even happier if you subscribe to my channel. This will make me even happier. Let's get started. Victor Dalton had never been one to talk just to fill silence. He let his actions speak louder than any words ever could. At 57, the calluses on his hands told the story of a man who had deliberately chosen the hard road at every turn. 15 years ago, he and his wife started a medical technology company out of their garage, driven by Victor's unshakable belief that affordable neural diagnostics could revolutionize treatment for seizure conditions. Penelope hadn't been impressed when he quit his secure position as a hospital administrator. "This is your midlife crisis?" she'd teased, her smirk as sharp as ever. "Most men just buy sports cars." But Victor was never interested in cliches. Raised in a steelworker's home in Pittsburgh, he had paid his way through medical school by working night shifts in factories. His peers came from wealth, he came from grit. Their weathered home in Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, reflected the state of their marriage, a place that once held warmth, but now only echoed with the ghosts of what used to be. After nearly 3 decades together, he and Penelope had become little more than cohabitants. Their children, Ariana, 27, Tristan, 25, and Camilla, 23, had all earned their degrees with his help, even as the company's slow start drained nearly every dollar they had. That evening, Victor sat alone in his study, reviewing the final paperwork that would sign away ownership of the business he'd poured himself into. Following a breakthrough in their neural implant trials, MedCore Innovations had offered to buy NeuroSave for an unbelievable $40 million. The number still didn't seem real, even as he read it over again. "Dad? Mom wants to know if you're coming to dinner." Tristan's voice broke the silence. He stood in the doorway, clearly impatient. "I'll be down in a bit," Victor answered, tucking the documents into a folder. But Tristan lingered. "You've been off lately. Is something going on with the company?" "Just some last-minute paperwork," Victor said, dodging the question. He planned to surprise them, to reclaim a fragment of the respect he suspected they'd long lost for him. After Tristan left, Victor reopened his laptop to double-check a few figures. A notification flashed in the corner. Months ago, Penelope had accidentally synced her iCloud account to his device. He'd never gotten around to removing it. Her messages still flowed in, including one from a group chat titled "Dad's Failures." Victor's heart thudded as he clicked on it, thinking it had to be some kind of twisted joke. But what he uncovered was 7 years of group conversations between Penelope, all 3 kids, and a man named Liam Monroe, her personal trainer from the country club. "Dad's convinced that brain gadget of his is going to change the world," Ariana had written just last week. "Still living in fantasy land." "Maybe someone should tell him no one wants to fund his basement science project," Tristan added. "Nah, let him dream. Keeps him distracted while Mom and I train together," Liam replied, punctuated with a winking emoji. "You're awful," Penelope had responded, followed by a string of laughing emojis. "But hey, as long as he's married to his company, he won't notice a thing." Victor scrolled, his pulse slowing to a cold crawl. Everything he had confided, every moment of struggle they had witnessed, had been reduced to mockery. They had turned his life's work and his pain into entertainment. Photos of him at his desk were captioned like sitcom episodes. The Delusional CEO, Season 5, Episode 7. Hands shaking, he shut the laptop. The people he had worked himself to the bone for, those he had loved and supported without question, had secretly laughed at him for years. That night at dinner, Victor felt like a stranger at his own table. Penelope chatted about her tennis partners. Ariana launched into a rant about corporate branding. Tristan boasted about a new finance internship. Camilla flashed a pair of expensive heels that no teacher's salary could justify. It struck him like a punch. He hadn't just funded their degrees, he had bankrolled their lives, all while they whispered behind his back. "You're quiet tonight, Dad," Camilla observed, eyes glued to her phone. "Just thinking about what the future holds," he said. "Thinking about trust, and what happens when it breaks." Penelope chuckled. "Don't tell me NeuroSave's tanking again. We've been through that drama before." This time, he didn't miss the sneer in her voice. "You could say I've come to a realization," Victor said, his tone measured. "Sometimes the truth isn't hidden. It's just ignored." The following morning, Victor made sure everyone was gathered for their usual family breakfast, a tradition he had stubbornly clung to even as their interest waned. "Before we eat," he began, holding up his tablet, "there's something I'd like to share." He tapped the screen. A series of screenshots from the Dad's Failures chat filled the display. Penelope's face turned pale. Tristan dropped his fork with a metallic clatter. Ariana froze mid-sip. Camilla looked like someone had doused her in ice water. 7 years, Victor began, his voice even but brittle with betrayal. 7 years of mockery. 7 years of being the punchline. "Come on, Dad. It was just jokes," Tristan said weakly, flashing a nervous grin that quickly faded under Victor's steady gaze. "And you, Penelope?" he asked, eyes locking onto hers. "How long have you and Liam been sneaking around?" "Oh, Victor, don't do this," she said quickly. "It was harmless. Just banter. Liam and I, it's not serious." "Not serious?" Victor echoed, flipping through messages on the screen. "Weekend trips while I was away on business? Joking about how checked out I was? How I'd never notice?" "Dad, we didn't mean," Ariana began. "But you did," Victor cut in sharply. "You meant every single word, every backhanded comment, every cruel laugh. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise." "For God's sake, it was just humor," Camilla muttered, glaring. Victor stared at them, at this hollow shell of a family he'd built, and finally saw it for what it was. Most families have group chats, little hubs of connection. But this felt more like a cruel parody of one. Victor's voice, low and simmering with barely contained rage, cut through the digital noise. This is what I break my back for? 60 hours a week so you can all chase your dreams on my dime?" He let out a bitter laugh, eyes narrowing. "Was it hilarious when I took a second mortgage just to keep our business breathing?" The silence that followed was so thick it seemed to absorb the air from the room. "I want you all gone," he said finally, each word hard as granite. Penelope blinked in disbelief, her voice trembling. "Gone? What are you saying? This is my home too." "It's not," Victor replied coolly. "Legally, the house belongs to me. The deed says so." He drew in a slow breath. "My attorney's already in the loop. You have until tonight to take what you need and leave." Tristan shot to his feet. "You can't be serious. You're bluffing." Victor's eyes locked on him, unflinching. "I've never meant anything more. You all made your choices." He added, quieter. "And you've stuck with them for 7 years. Ariana's voice, brittle and edged with fear, broke in. "Where are we even supposed to go?" Victor didn't miss a beat. "Maybe Liam can give Penelope a place. Or maybe now one of your successful kids can offer some of the help I always did." He stood, adjusting his blazer with finality. Wasn't I just the loser with the flopped company anyway? Without waiting for a reply, he walked toward the door. I'll be at work. You've got until I return. As the cold air hit his face and the door clicked shut behind him, Victor didn't feel victorious, just emptied. Confirmed in something he'd long suspected. The family he'd believed in, it had never really been there, just shadows and wishful thinking. 3 weeks passed in absolute silence. He changed the locks, blocked their numbers, handed off all interaction to his lawyer, Harvey Gonzalez. Penelope had apparently moved into Liam's condo. The kids? They scattered, finally realizing those sleek apartments they lived in were courtesy of Victor's quiet generosity. That generosity had ended. All of it. Gone. No more rent payments, no more luxury vehicles, no more platinum cards, gym passes, or endless subscriptions. All kinds of furious voicemails, Harvey told him during one of their routine meetings. They think you're just throwing a tantrum, that you'll come around. I won't, Victor replied, pen poised over the final documents cementing the acquisition of NeuroSafe. The deal was still under wraps, intentionally. Harvey gave a pause, choosing his words. About the will. Cutting out your whole family is going to raise eyebrows in probate. Judges look hard at that. Victor waved him off. I'm not dead, Harvey, and the trust is rock solid. Just like we planned. That night, in a house that once held echoes of laughter, but now echoed only its absence, Victor reviewed the rollout for the next day. A press release, a shift in the narrative, a new beginning. By the following afternoon, his phone lit up like a pinball machine. Despite the blocks, calls poured in. Word had spread. NeuroSave, the dismissed, mocked garage project, had just been sold to MedCore Innovations for a jaw-dropping $40 million. He waited until later to check the voicemails. They were all there, each one more transparent than the last. Dad, I'm so proud, Ariana said, her voice suddenly sweet and admiring. Pops! I always knew you had something cooking, Tristan insisted, like they'd never drifted. Daddy, please, call me, Camilla whispered. I miss you. Then Penelope. Victor, we need to have a real conversation. What we had, nearly 3 decades, it matters. Let's talk. But there were no apologies, no acknowledgments of how deep the betrayal ran. Just a flurry of tone shifts now that he was no longer just a man. They saw value again. Victor deleted every message without a second thought, then dialed Harvey. They reached out, he said calmly. As predicted, Harvey responded. Shall we move forward? Exactly as planned, Victor confirmed. Phase 2 begins now. From his parked car, Victor watched through the windshield as Penelope and Liam emerged from the country club. They were laughing like actors in a commercial, all teeth and shallow joy. Liam's ridiculous cherry-red sports car glinted obnoxiously under the sun. Victor didn't even blink. 3 months had passed since everything had unraveled. The attempts to reconnect had only grown more desperate. And then came the letter. Penelope's lawyer, emboldened and pushy, claimed the prenuptial agreement was invalid, that Penelope had signed it under pressure, that she was entitled to half his assets. It was laughable. The agreement had been bulletproof from the start. But it wasn't about fairness. It was about grabbing what she could. He'd already done the homework. Liam Monroe wasn't new to this game. A serial opportunist. He made a habit of courting wealthy married women, draining their finances, then disappearing once the money ran dry. Penelope was just the latest in a long line, and not the only one. Victor's private file included 2 other women Liam was currently seeing, also married, also oblivious. As for his children, they'd been forced to adapt without the invisible net Victor had always maintained beneath them. Ariana, no longer able to afford her glamorous solo lifestyle, had taken on a roommate. Tristan, who had always bragged about his financial prowess, had quietly started borrowing from friends to keep up appearances. And Camilla, the youngest, had downsized. She wasn't thriving, not exactly, but she was holding her own in a modest apartment. Of the three, she was the only one Victor hadn't completely written off. Not yet. Victor's phone lit up with a message from Dana Winters, his old executive assistant from NeuroSafe and the only person he trusted enough to bring into his new venture. Westridge Health meeting confirmed. 2 p.m. tomorrow. Dana had stood by him when NeuroSafe collapsed, one of the rare individuals who had truly believed in his vision. Unlike his family, she never weaponized his failures. She recognized them as stepping stones, not dead ends. As recognition for her unwavering support, Dana received a sizable payout from the sale of NeuroSafe and was appointed to a crucial leadership role at his new startup, Criterion Medical Systems. Funded by the proceeds of his former company's exit, Criterion was built to transform the way medical professionals train, directly challenging SimuMed, where Liam had just been hired as a sales director thanks to Penelope's connections. Victor started his engine and drove toward a meeting with Raymond Torres, a former rival who now held significant influence in medical equipment distribution across the Northeast. "Victor Dalton," Raymond said, greeting him at a polished, high-end restaurant with a firm shake of the hand. "You're the guy who turned down my deal 3 years ago," he remarked, no small talk. "The timing wasn't right," Victor replied calmly. "And now here you are, asking for a hand in taking down Seema Ahmed's company," Raymond said, going straight to the point. "The same company that just hired your ex-wife's boyfriend." "Soon-to-be ex," Victor corrected him. "And yes, I believe there's value for both of us." Raymond studied him closely. "This feels personal." "Business always is," Victor said coolly. "SimuMed's tech is stale. What I've built is more efficient, and it costs less. So I'd earn more selling your system? And if Liam Monroe's shiny new job tanks in the process, that's just part of the fallout," Victor said, unapologetic. Raymond let out a dry laugh. "I like this version of you, the ruthless one." He lifted his glass. "Here's to revenge that pays the bills." That night, for the first time in months, Penelope didn't send a text or call. She showed up at his door. "You're looking sharp," she said when he opened it, eyes flicking over his fitted suit and composed demeanor. Victor had lost weight, hired a trainer, and adopted a more focused, deliberate air. "What do you want, Penelope?" he asked, making no move to let her in. "We need to discuss what comes next," she said. "The divorce, the house, what it all means going forward." "You mean you and Liam," he replied flatly. "There's no us, just consequences," she said, face tightening. "This move against Seema Med, is that retaliation? Liam said you met with Raymond." "My business dealings aren't yours to question anymore." "This isn't you," she said, her voice softening. "You were never one to hold grudges." "You never understood me," Victor said coldly. "The man you ridiculed for years? That was someone you invented." "We could still try to fix things," she said, the desperation now plain in her voice. "Therapy, a fresh start, for the kids. That chance ended when you created a group chat mocking me, with our children." He closed the door before she could answer. It wasn't satisfaction, he felt, just a deep, unwavering determination. The gears were already in motion. Phase 2 had officially begun. The next day, Dana handed him a tablet. "See, Mohammed just lost Westridge," she said. "Raymond's distributors have signed preliminary deals across the Northeast." 6 months into the operation, the results were becoming visible. Criterion's prototypes outclassed SimuMed's across the board, at lower prices. "Liam was managing the Westridge account," Dana added, a hint of amusement in her tone. "He thought it'd be his big break. He's under review now." Victor gave a small nod, face unreadable. "What about Europe?" "We're meeting their delegates next week. If we secure their network, SimuMed's out of Europe for at least 3 years. Targeting SimuMed was only one prong of Victor's strategy. By re-establishing relationships with key figures in medical education, contacts he'd cultivated during the NeuroSafe era, he was positioning Criterion as the future of the industry. At the same time, Seema Ahmed's operation would come to seem obsolete. "I got another call from Tristan," Dana said cautiously. She was the only one with insight into Victor's personal affairs. He sounded boxed in. Tristan had recently been dismissed from his finance job, an outcome Victor had subtly influenced. Nothing illegal, just a few well-timed truths about Tristan's unimpressive performance making their way to the right ears. "And this came in from Ariana," Dana added, passing him a cream-colored envelope. Inside was a wedding invitation. Ariana was marrying Preston Walsh, a surgeon, in 3 months. A handwritten message accompanied it. "Dad, I know things have been difficult, but I can't imagine my wedding day without you there. Please call me. Love, Ariana." Victor folded the invitation and placed it silently in his drawer. Victor's investigation into Preston Walsh had unearthed the portrait of a polished, well-educated surgeon born into a life of privilege, seemingly oblivious to Chet's shortcomings or Ariana's complicity in the family's hidden transgressions. Victor couldn't help but wonder what carefully edited version of events Preston had been fed. Late that evening, while Victor worked in solitude at his desk, the doorbell rang. He checked the surveillance feed and saw Camilla standing alone outside, clutching a portfolio, nerves etched clearly across her expression. Unlike her siblings, she hadn't come begging for money or attempting to sway him in the aftermath of their dramatic fallout. Her messages, read but never acknowledged, had taken a noticeable turn over time. The initial confrontational tone, "You're being ridiculous," had slowly softened into doubt. "I've been thinking things over," and eventually settled into remorse. "I truly regret what I did to you." After a moment of stillness, Victor rose and opened the door. "Dad?" she said, her voice tinged with both relief and hope. "Thanks for letting me in." "What is it you need, Camilla?" he asked, measured and cautious. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking," she said gently. He nodded once and motioned her toward the living room, deliberately bypassing his office, a subtle but firm boundary. She sat down and opened her portfolio. "I resigned from my teaching position," she said. "I've been developing something I wanted you to see." Inside were designs and early models for educational tools aimed at children with cognitive disabilities. "You always talked about making medical technology accessible," she said. "It made me think education is still so far behind. These are just early drafts, but—" "Why bring this to me?" he interrupted, his expression unreadable. She drew in a deep breath. "Because I need to tell you the truth. What we did to you, it was cruel. There's no justification." She paused to keep her voice from breaking. "I've spent months trying to understand why I turned against someone I care about." "And what did you find?" Victor asked, his tone flat. "I was afraid," she admitted, "and I doubted myself. It felt safer to dismiss your ambitions than risk failing at my own." Her eyes glistened. "I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness or support. I just need you to know I finally understand. I see what you were trying to build. And I'm trying to create something now, too, because you inspired me." Victor studied her closely, searching for the familiar signs of dishonesty. He found none. After a long silence, he spoke. "Your work has potential, but trust doesn't return overnight." "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "I just missed you." As she left, something within Victor shifted, small but undeniable. A crack formed in the emotional defenses he'd spent years fortifying. Among all his children, Camilla alone had avoided manipulation, had shown true contrition, yet the machinery he had set into motion was now well beyond retreat. By the next morning, new reports had come in. Liam had been demoted at CMU Medical after the Westridge partnership imploded. Harvey, ever meticulous, shared Penelope's growing desperation. Her commission pipeline had dried up, and she was now fighting to regain access to accounts Victor had already locked down. "She's instructing her lawyer to contest the prenup," Harvey noted. "Let her," Victor replied icily. "Move forward with Phase 3. The upcoming Chicago Medical Innovation Conference marked a year since Victor had discovered the infamous group chat dubbed Dad's Failures. Now, as he prepared to debut Criterion's breakthrough training platform during the keynote, he reflected on how methodically it had all come together. Seem Ahmed's business was on the verge of collapse, its client base almost entirely poached by Criterion. Liam had been fired months ago, his name tarnished beyond repair. Penelope had launched divorce proceedings, chasing extravagant alimony in defiance of the ironclad prenup, a futile attempt to cling to a crumbling past. Tristan drifted from one job to another, his underwhelming performance impossible to conceal, even under the weight of his father's name. Ariana had married Preston, though Victor's conspicuous absence at the ceremony was a shadow she likely struggled to explain away. Camilla alone had kept occasional contact, sending progress updates on her initiative without ever asking for aid. Her latest message had been brief. "Even if you never forgive us, I'm proud of what you've built, the company, and the courage it took to defend your vision." Victor stood before the mirror, straightening his tie, when Dana entered the room, urgency in her step. "They've arrived," she said. He didn't need clarification. "Who?" "Penelope, Liam, Tristan, Ariana, and her husband, all registered for the conference." She handed him a tablet with the attendee list. "Camilla?" "She's not with them." He gave a small nod. "They're hoping to corner me. Some public moment where I can't simply walk away. Should we have security remove them?" Victor considered this for a moment. "No," he said softly. "Let them watch. Let them look." Victor had just revealed Criterion's groundbreaking neural interface training system, a technological leap so immense it rendered SemaMed's entire product line obsolete in a single stroke. The medical community's response was swift and emphatic. Purchase requests flooded in before he even left the stage. At the evening reception, as Victor networked with major figures, including the chief of neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, he noticed a familiar cluster loitering at the room's edge. Penelope and Liam stood apart, their faces unreadable. Tristan shifted uncomfortably in a suit that didn't quite fit, while Ariana leaned toward her husband, whispering something that left him visibly perplexed. Victor deliberately turned away, centering his attention once more on the neurosurgeon. But then a hand touched his arm. "Victor, we need to speak," Penelope said quietly. Her voice was composed, but a tremor of urgency ran beneath it. "All of us, as a family." The neurosurgeon nodded politely and took his leave, sensing the change in atmosphere. Victor turned toward her. "There's really nothing left to discuss," he said, calm and unwavering. "Dad, seriously," Ariana added, stepping forward with Preston at her side. "This has gone on long enough. You've made your point." Victor raised an eyebrow. "And what point would that be?" "That you're the winner, and we're the ones who were wrong," Tristan said, moving closer. "Message received." "This was never about proving anything," Victor replied evenly. "It's about consequences, about facing what you've done." "You've destroyed Liam's career," Penelope snapped. "You cut us out completely. Isn't that enough?" "You created a group chat called Dad's Failures," Victor said, his tone unflinching. "For years you belittled me, dismissed my work, laughed at my goals, and tore down our marriage. And now that the company you mocked has succeeded, you want forgiveness?" Preston turned toward Ariana, disbelief on his face. "Is that true?" Ariana hesitated. "It wasn't like that. It was just jokes." "Then show him," Victor said, motioning toward Preston. "Let him read the messages. He can decide if they were jokes or cruelty." "This is ridiculous," Liam burst out, stepping closer. "You sabotaged me on purpose, tanked my reputation." "No," Victor said coolly. "I excelled. The market made its choice. Isn't that how merit works, Liam?" Security staff began drifting toward them, sensing trouble. Dana, Victor's executive assistant, appeared at his side, reading the situation immediately. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, already prepared to step in. "We're done," Victor said, his voice final. He scanned their faces one last time. "The time to fix this passed a year ago, when I gave you the chance to come clean. You chose ridicule instead." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Preston demanded to see the messages. Ariana stammered explanations. Penelope called his name, her voice rising in frustration, but none of them stopped him. It was a soft voice from a quiet corner that caught his attention. "Dad." Camilla sat alone at a table, an open portfolio in front of her, the same kind she'd shown him once before. She hadn't joined the confrontation. She hadn't said a word. Victor slowed, then adjusted his course and approached her. "You stayed out of it," he noted, coming to stand by her table. She nodded. "I didn't come to fight. I wanted to hear your keynote." She gestured to her notes. "The neural interface. I think it could have huge implications for accessible education. I've started outlining ideas." He studied her face, as if weighing something unspoken. Then he came to a quiet decision. "I have another meeting soon," he said, "but I'm free for breakfast tomorrow. 8 o'clock, hotel restaurant." Camilla blinked, surprised. "I'll be there." As Victor exited the reception hall, a storm of emotions swirled inside him. Penelope, Liam, Tristan, Ariana, they still didn't see the damage they'd inflicted. They mistook his silence and separation for revenge instead of the natural result of betrayal. But Camilla had approached differently. She hadn't pushed. She hadn't demanded anything. She respected the distance and came simply to listen. Phase 3 of his plan was nearly executed. The final moves were close. But for the first time in years, he wondered if perhaps one person had actually changed. Breakfast the next day quietly marked a shift. For 2 hours, they spoke not of family fractures, but of possibility. Camilla described her vision for adaptive learning tools powered by neural data, tools for children with cognitive challenges. Her concepts were thoughtful, innovative, and deeply personal. "You're not here for money," Victor said as they wrapped up. "No," she confirmed. "I just wanted your thoughts. I'm applying for grant funding next month." He gave a small nod of respect. Then his gaze met hers, serious now. "Why did you join the group chat? You never said much in it, but you were there." She didn't dodge. "I was trying to belong," she said honestly. "Mom, Ariana, and Tristan were so close. I didn't fit until they brought me into that circle." It wasn't meant as an excuse, just a statement of fact. Her eyes held firm as they met his. "I should have stood by you instead of chasing their approval." The sincerity in her voice struck something deep within Victor. Before they parted, he quietly handed her a personal contact number, something no other family member had received since the estrangement. 2 weeks after the conference concluded, Seema Med filed for bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Liam, still unemployed and growing desperate, began selling off his possessions to sustain the lifestyle he had promised Penelope. According to the hushed gossip Harvey overheard, their marriage was unraveling. Penelope's legal bid to void the prenuptial agreement had failed. The court upheld every clause without exception. As her once secure world began to unravel and Liam's reassurances proved empty, Penelope started reaching out to old acquaintances, most of whom had already distanced themselves. The quiet undercurrent of Victor's account of her betrayal had made its rounds within their social circles. Tristan had moved into a cramped apartment in a rundown part of town, his financial struggles no longer hidden. Even Ariana's marriage was beginning to crack. Preston had finally gone through the message logs and was struggling to reconcile them with the woman he had married. Victor didn't feel vindicated by their misfortune. The hollowness he had carried since discovering the truth hadn't faded. It remained, carved out from where trust used to be. While Criterion's rise brought him professional fulfillment, it did little to ease his personal emptiness. Then, on a gray, rain-soaked Tuesday, someone unexpected showed up at Criterion's headquarters. Preston Walsh, looking uncomfortable and out of place. Once ushered into Victor's office, it was he who spoke first. "Mr. Dalton," he said cautiously. Victor kept his tone neutral. "Dr. Walsh, what brings you here?" "I know I should have called first," Preston began, steadying his voice. "But I've read the messages." Victor's gaze sharpened. "All of them?" Preston nodded slowly. "After the conference, Ariana showed me everything. I can't imagine what it was like, finding that out after years of loyalty." "And yet, you stayed," Victor observed. "I believe people can change," Preston replied. "But it only starts with acknowledging the damage done." He hesitated, then added, "Ariana's pregnant. You'll be a grandfather in about 7 months." The announcement hit Victor like a sudden, unexpected wind. New life, untouched by past betrayals. "I'm not asking you to forgive her," Preston continued. "I just felt you had the right to know." He pulled a card from his coat pocket and placed it on the desk. "This is her therapist. She's trying to understand her choices, not to excuse them, just to take responsibility, if and when you're ready." Once Preston had gone, Victor remained motionless. The office was silent around him. The prospect of a grandchild stirred something unfamiliar, an emotion that disrupted the clarity of the boundaries he had drawn. He had built his world around justice, not second chances. But an innocent life was about to arrive. That evening, while reviewing acquisition files, his encrypted phone buzzed, the one known only to Dana, and more recently, Camilla. The message was brief and jarring. "Something happened to Mom. She's in the hospital. Attempted suicide. Stable but sedated. Thought you should know." The paperwork in front of him blurred. This wasn't what he had envisioned. He had wanted consequences, yes, but not this. Despite everything, Penelope had shared nearly 3 decades of his life. A dull ache spread in his chest. After a long pause, he typed back, "Which hospital?" 4 hours later, Victor stood just outside her room. Tristan noticed him first, rising abruptly with a scowl. "You've got no right to be here," he hissed. "Haven't you done enough?" Camilla stepped in before it escalated. "Stop it, Theo." "Why should I?" he snapped. "He drove her to this." "Mom made her own decisions," Camilla said, calm but firm. "We all did. Don't put this on Dad." Ariana, her eyes bloodshot and voice bitter, muttered, "Classic Camilla. Always scrambling to be the favorite." Victor quietly asked, "Where's Liam?" The silence was telling. Eventually, Camilla responded, "He left her last week, after the money was gone and she'd sold her last piece of jewelry." Victor gave a faint nod, unsurprised. "How is she?" "She'll recover physically," Camilla answered. "The doctors are recommending a psych evaluation next." "I want to see her," Victor said. Tristan looked ready to object, but Victor added, "She's unconscious. I won't interfere." With hesitation, they moved aside. Tristan's glare lingered. Ariana refused to look at him. Camilla gently touched Victor's arm in quiet support as he passed. Inside the dim hospital room, Penelope looked fragile beneath the thin blankets, diminished from the woman he remembered. Victor sat at her bedside, watching her in silence. "This wasn't what I wanted," he whispered. "I wanted you to face what you did, to own it, but not like this." He stayed a while longer, unmoving, then quietly got up and walked away. Just as he approached the doorway, a soft but distinct voice stopped him cold. Victor. He turned. Penelope was awake, her gaze locked on him. You really showed up, she said, her voice faint. I did, he replied. To gloat? There was a trace of bitterness, familiar and sharp. No, he said gently, his voice losing its edge. I came to make sure you're okay. And why would that matter to you? Her words wavered, as if they were crumbling under their own weight. You've already taken everything that meant anything to me. You made your decisions, Penelope, Victor said quietly. You chose Liam. You laughed in my face when I offered respect. I just stopped making it easy to live like that. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. I didn't think you'd ever find out. That doesn't make it hurt less, Victor said, steady. Get the help you need. Not for me or for the kids. For yourself. He turned and stepped into the hallway. His children were waiting. Tristan stood with arms crossed, his eyes carefully avoiding Victor's. Ariana glanced up for the briefest moment before her eyes dropped to her hands, one gently resting on her rounded belly. Camilla stepped forward. Thanks for coming, she said. Victor nodded once. She needs real help, professional help. I'll cover the cost of a proper facility. Why? Tristan's voice was sharp, angry. After everything you've done? I cut off the money because I needed her to face reality, Victor replied, his voice even. That wasn't revenge. This is different. As he walked away, one truth settled in. Penelope's attempt to end her life had shattered any illusion he had left. He hadn't wanted ruin. He'd wanted her to be held accountable. But now, he saw how easily justice could sour when it lacked empathy. He arranged for her to be admitted to a top psychiatric center near the Chesapeake Bay, a respected institution known for its treatment programs. Victor kept in touch with her doctors, but he never visited. The divorce went ahead, but he told his attorney, Harvey, to ensure Penelope would have enough to live with stability, not extravagantly, but with self-respect. It wasn't about guilt. It was about doing what was right. 2 months after her hospitalization, Victor invited Camilla to dinner. She arrived with her design portfolio tucked under her arm, a nervous smile on her face. I got the grant, she said once they settled into his study. Not the full amount, but enough to get the prototype going. That's a major milestone, Victor said, genuinely proud. They clearly believe in your vision. Over dinner, they talked about her project, the technical setbacks, the road ahead. The conversation moved easily, not like it used to, but freer, more honest. Dad, Camilla said softly after they cleared the plates, Ariana's baby shower is next weekend. She hesitated. She didn't want me to tell you. She's scared you'll say no if she asks directly. Victor paused. How's Preston? He's been wonderful, Camilla said. Really grounded. His family's solid. And Tristan? He's still angry, she admitted. Blames you for everything. He won't own any of it. He's working retail now, a big step down from where he was in finance. Victor nodded. That didn't surprise him. And how about you? He asked. How are you really doing? She seemed caught off guard. I'm trying, she said. Some days feel manageable. Some don't. I miss what we had before, but I understand now why it had to change. She looked him in the eye. I'm sorry, Dad. Not because I want anything. Not because of money. Just because we were wrong. Her words landed with quiet force. They felt real. I believe you, he said. A week later, a package arrived at Ariana and Preston's house, a top-of-the-line crib with all the latest safety features. Inside was a small handwritten card. For my grandchild. Victor Dalton. He didn't attend the shower, but the gift, and what it said, was deliberate, a gesture of care, a step toward balance. His company, Criterion, was thriving. They had expanded internationally, pioneering applications of Victor's neural interface tech and revolutionizing medical training. He buried himself in the work, drawing meaning from progress and purpose. 3 months later, Harvey called. "Liam Monroe got in touch," he said. "He says he has something, claims it's important. He wants you to drop what he calls your vendetta in exchange for it." Victor's tone turned sharp. "What kind of information?" "He says Penelope didn't start the group chat, says it was Tristan, and he has proof." Victor was silent for a moment. "Set up the meeting," he said. When Victor walked into Harvey's office and saw Liam, it was obvious the man had taken some hits. The sleek suits were gone, replaced by generic office wear. His trademark arrogance had dulled. "Thanks for coming," Liam began. Victor didn't bother with pleasantries. "Let's see what you've got," he said. Liam tapped the screen of a tablet, already aglow with messages. It was during Tristan's second year in college that he brought the group together. At that point, he was barely staying afloat academically, even as he kept up the illusion that his grades were exceptional. The chat group was his way of launching a preemptive attack, mocking others before his own failures could be exposed. Liam had shown Victor a series of messages, some of which Liam had only recently uncovered himself. First between Tristan and Penelope, then later joined by Ariana, with Camilla coming into the fold years down the line. Penelope was definitely part of it, Liam said, voice steady. But none of it would have happened without Tristan. He was the architect. He pulled the strings from the start. "Why tell me this now?" Victor asked. "Because I'm trying to salvage what's left of my life," Liam admitted, his guard finally dropping. "What you did to Seema Med, it was deliberate, ruthless. I can't get a job in the industry anymore. You mocked me with the rest of them, and you slept with my wife," Victor replied, his tone ice cold. "I won't pretend I was innocent," Liam said, not flinching. "But I didn't mastermind the collapse of your family. That was all Tristan." After Liam walked out, Victor sat alone in the quiet of Harvey's conference room, processing everything he'd just heard. Tristan, his only son, the one he'd trusted more than anyone, hadn't started the group on a whim. It had been calculated, a shield, a move to undermine Victor's reputation before Tristan's own academic crisis caught up with him. The betrayal wasn't random, it had been tactical. Understanding that didn't ease the pain, but it did bring clarity. Tristan's resentment ran deep, and he had the most to lose if the full truth were ever exposed. That night, Victor made 2 calls. The first was to Camilla, asking her to bring her prototype to the Criterion Labs for assessment. The second was to Preston, accepting a dinner invitation with him and Ariana for the following week. The dinner went exactly as Victor had anticipated, strained and heavy. Ariana, visibly pregnant, seemed caught between nervous diplomacy and a need to make amends. Preston, calm and measured, guided the conversation with the detached empathy of someone trained to navigate emotional landmines. "I've started seeing a therapist," Ariana said eventually, breaking a long silence. "It's helping me figure out why I let it all happen, why I let it hurt you." Her hand moved gently over her growing stomach. "I don't want to repeat the same mistakes." "That's a start," Victor said, voice neutral. "Do you think you'll be able to forgive us?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "Forgiveness doesn't happen in an instant," he replied after a pause. "It's something you move through, but I showed up tonight. That counts for something." When the dinner ended, Preston accompanied Victor to his car. "She's really trying," he said. "This baby, it's given her perspective." "What about Tristan?" Victor asked. Preston's face clouded. "No change. He still blames everything on you. He's pressuring her to cut ties again. Says reconnecting with you is a betrayal." Liam's words replayed in Victor's mind. Tristan had always had the most to hide. If the truth about his role in creating the group ever came out, the fallout would be catastrophic for him. Victor's thoughts began to coalesce into something clear. Real justice wouldn't just mean exposing the group, it would mean revealing the purpose behind it and who truly set it in motion. Only then could any real healing begin? Half a year later, Victor stood silently in a hospital corridor, watching through a glass panel as his newborn grandson lay swaddled and sleeping. Robert Victor Walsh, named in part for him, had arrived a bit earlier than expected but was healthy. He had Ariana's eyes, Preston's jaw. Camilla stood beside him, her education tech prototype now fully funded after successful tests at Criterion. Her path to redemption had been direct, honest remorse, followed by tangible, consistent change. Ariana's road had been more tangled. Therapy had peeled back layers of insecurity and a deep-seated hunger for approval, traits that had made her susceptible to Tristan's manipulation. Her relationships, both with her father and her husband, remained fragile but were on the mend. The child had given her a powerful reason to break the patterns that had damaged so much. Penelope had finished her rehab program and was now living in a simple condo, one Victor had bought for her as part of their divorce, not from guilt, but out of a quiet sense of mercy. Their conversations were rare. The wounds were still fresh, but the hostility had faded into something more like weary acceptance. Tristan was the lone holdout. He refused to change, refused to reflect. As Ariana and Penelope worked through their pasts in therapy, the origin story of the group and Tristan's role in it slowly emerged. "He's beautiful," Camilla murmured, eyes fixed on the newborn. "You're lucky, Dad." "I know," Victor said, voice tight with emotion. Preston stepped into the hall, looking exhausted but content. "Ariana wants to see you," he said. In the hospital room, Ariana glanced up as he entered. "Dad," she said quietly, "I'm glad you came." "He's perfect," Victor said, gazing down at the infant. "I gave him your name as his middle name," she said softly. "I hope that's all right." The gesture hit harder than he'd expected. "It's more than all right," he replied, barely above a whisper. They spoke softly for a while, the sharp edge that had once cut through their conversations now dulled. Their exchange felt easier, more natural, something that hadn't happened in a long time. When Victor finally stood to leave, giving her the chance to rest, Ariana reached for his hand and held it tightly. "There's something Tristan's up to," she said, her expression clouded with concern. "He came over yesterday, furious that I gave the baby your name." She hesitated before continuing. "He told me you were going to get what you deserve. I think you need to be careful." Victor met her eyes, composed despite her words. "Thank you for telling me," he said. 3 days later, the phone rang. It was Harvey, calling with news. "Tristan's filed a civil suit," he reported. "He's accusing you of psychological manipulation, financial coercion, and deliberate emotional harm. He's asking for $20 million in damages." The accusations were baseless, but they exposed just how erratic Tristan had become, a reckless attempt to strike at someone he could no longer control. "And," Harvey added, "he's talking to reporters. He's trying to spin a narrative that you destroyed your family out of revenge after your success." Victor had been anticipating this. "Activate Protocol 5, he said steadily. "It's time to lay everything bare." 7 days later, Tristan sat across from a journalist representing a major business outlet, poised to share his version of events. Just before the interview began, a courier approached with a large envelope. "What's this?" Tristan asked, a flicker of suspicion in his voice. "Mr. Dalton thought you'd appreciate the full context before speaking on the record," the courier replied, then turned and left. Inside the envelope was a meticulously compiled dossier. It chronicled the inception and evolution of the Dad's Failures group chat, unmistakably attributing its creation and leadership to Tristan. The file also included Tristan's college transcripts, highlighting his probationary status, and detailed financial records that demonstrated Victor's steady support even during periods of public humiliation. Statements sworn under oath by Penelope, Ariana, and Liam further illustrated Tristan's long history of degradation and abuse. The next day, Tristan withdrew the lawsuit. The journalist, having reviewed the contents of the packet, opted not to publish the story. A month passed. Victor held a small gathering at his home. Preston and Ariana came with baby Robert, Camilla introduced her new business partner, and Dana arrived with her husband. Tristan did not attend. After the failed lawsuit, he had cut ties with the rest of the family. As Camilla presented a prototype, Preston joked with Ariana, and Victor cradled his grandson. He observed the room quietly. The family that had once existed had unraveled, the truth finally breaking what false loyalty had held together. But in its place, something genuine had begun to emerge, formed not out of obligation, but out of mutual respect, responsibility, and honest connection. The company he had started from the ground up had exceeded all expectations. Those who had mocked his ambition had been forced to reckon with the consequences of their behavior. Yet those who had chosen introspection and sincere apology had found a way to return. This wasn't the future he had pictured 15 years ago in that dimly lit garage. But holding Robert, the living symbol of what might still be, Victor felt something shift inside him, something that had been empty for years. Not the blind trust of his younger self, but a cautious hope, built on something more durable. The pain of being dismissed had left scars on everyone involved. But for those willing to rebuild, a new structure could rise, not a replica of what was lost, but perhaps something stronger, forged in truth and shaped with care. Handing Robert back to Ariana, Victor accepted that some relationships, especially the one with Tristan, were beyond repair. He no longer waited for apologies that would never arrive, but he had learned to recognize the rare and difficult gift of genuine remorse. Once dismissed as a failure, Victor Dalton had achieved something that endured, not just success in business, but integrity in life. He had remained true to his principles, forgiven when it was deserved, and understood that reconciliation without honesty was meaningless. The ridicule had stopped. The truth had won out. And life, imperfect but enduring, moved forward. Our story comes to an end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for taking the time to watch. If you enjoyed this story, please check out other videos on this channel. See you soon, my dear friend.